Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you an incredible and chilling story. Let's meet Sable Lockwood, a nurse who died for 7 minutes and 23 seconds and had a near-death experience that changed her life forever. Jesus took her to a shocking vision of the future and revealed a great deception that is already being prepared for humanity. What she saw on the other side will leave you speechless. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now get ready for this intense and surprising journey. The rain beat against the windshield like a thick curtain, making the road almost invisible. The headlights of the few passing cars seemed like ghostly reflections in the wet night. I just wanted to get home. Working at the hospital in Boise, Idaho, was a calling, but also a burden. After a shift of 2 p.m., my muscles ached, my head throbbed, and my eyes could barely stay open. Every blink felt like a battle against overwhelming fatigue. I rested my hands on the steering wheel, trying to stay focused. My car slid a little on the wet road, and I held my breath before regaining control. The radio played softly, but I could barely hear the melody. The city seemed empty, silent except for the intermittent sound of rain and the distant murmur of thunder on the horizon. That's when it happened. Intense headlights. They appeared out of nowhere, advancing too quickly. A second earlier, the road was empty. The next, a truck invaded my lane and heading straight towards me. "No, no," I shouted, turning the steering wheel instinctively. But it was too late. The impact was an explosion of light and sound. My body was thrown against the seatbelt. The car spun out of control on the road, and a deafening sound of metal being crushed and glass shattering filled my ears. Everything became a blur. For a moment, I thought I felt a piercing heat pass through my skin, the pain of something breaking inside me. My head was thrown against the side of the car, and then suddenly everything went dark, silent. The world has lost its sound. The rain, the thunder, the screams, everything disappeared. My eyes opened for an instant. Everything was upside down. The overturned car, the smell of oil and blood permeated the air. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't move them. That's when a deep darkness involved me. The absolute silence was replaced by a terrifying emptiness. My breathing hitched. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. I was dying. Or maybe it already was dead. The absolute silence was like a dense ocean where time did not exist. There was no pain. There was no sound. Just emptiness. My consciousness floated in the darkness. It was as if I was trapped between two worlds, unable to understand where the old one ended and the new one began. And then I saw. At first, they were just disjointed fragments, a pale glow flashing in the distance, a distant hum, voices clipped, as if they were words thrown into the wind. Then, as if someone adjusted the focus of a lens, everything became clear. I was floating, above myself. Below, I saw my own body contorted between the car's hardware, blood dripping from my temple, my eyes half open, empty. My arms were twisted in a strange way, as if they belonged to someone else. I wanted to scream, but there was no mouth. There was no voice. What was happening? The sound of sirens filled the road. Ambulances. Paramedics rushed to the wreckage, picking their way through the twisted pieces of the car. One of them, a tall man with gray hair, knelt beside my body and placed 2 fingers on my throat. He looked at the colleague next to him and shook his head. "She's gone." The words cut like glass. If I had been there, then who was I now? I watched as a second paramedic, a tired-faced woman, tried to revive my body. She pressed my chest, counting out loud. The gray-haired man took the defibrillator. "Loading," he shouted. My body spasmed as electricity coursed through my flesh, but I didn't feel anything. I continued floating, not knowing where to go, without knowing what I was. Then something caught my attention. One of the paramedics closed his eyes and put his hands together. "Lord, if she still has a purpose here, bring her back." Shock ran through my soul like thunder. He was praying for me. It was at that moment that I felt something different. A warmth. A calling. Up there, high up, a light appeared. It was intense, but it didn't hurt the eyes. It was alive. And before, as soon as I could understand, I was pulled into her. The light enveloped me completely. It was unlike any light I had ever seen before. It wasn't just brightness. It was presence. It had a density, a consciousness. I don't just via you felt. It penetrated me, filling every empty space, every doubt, every fear. The moment I was sucked into it, all my pains disappeared. There was no longer any cold. There was no more anguish. Just peace. But it wasn't an anesthetizing emptiness. No, it was as if I were being returned to my true home. So I heard a voice. Sable. My heart, or whatever I had now, thumped. The sound did not come from outside. It came from within, from the light itself. And me, you knew who was there. You have died, but it is not your time yet. I tried to speak, but I had no mouth. My existence there was not physical. It was more than that. Little by little, the light began to shape itself. A silhouette took shape. And then, before me, was him, Jesus Christ. I had no doubts. It wasn't an image created by my mind. He was not the Jesus of paintings and statues. Era real. His face was not what I expected. He didn't have the pale skin of old paintings, nor the golden hair of stained glass churches. His skin was bright like liquid light. And your eyes. His eyes had the depth of the universe. It wasn't just eyes. They were portals. And when he looked at me, I felt like all the answers in the world were in there. There was no way to hide anything from him. Every mistake, every thought, every doubt I had throughout my life, everything was exposed. And yet, he me amava. Not with a distant or symbolic love. It was a living, pulsating, overwhelming love. I fell to my knees, or at least felt like I fell before him. Sir, what's going on? He approached. You need to see something. Something to come. So everything around me changed. The light dissipated. And before me appeared a vision of the future. The light around me began to dissolve like mist dissipating at dawn. My body, or what was left of it, seemed to be hurled through time and space. I was no longer in the direct presence of Jesus. Suddenly, I was somewhere else. It was a modern, vibrant city, but there was something about it that I couldn't immediately identify. The streets were full of people walking hurriedly, some talking, others staring into space, as if they were distracted. The sky was crystal blue, without a single cloud. I was there, but no one saw me. It was as if I were a ghost. I watched as a woman walked into a cafe. She grabbed a drink from the counter and, instead of paying with cash or card, simply handed it to her, hand over a sensor. No card, no phone, just the hand. My insides twisted. Something about that, it felt wrong. I turned to Jesus, who was now beside me, silently observing the scene. Is this the mark of the beast? I asked, my voice thick with fear. He looked at me with a serene but serious expression. Not yet. But this is the way. The phrase kept echoing in my mind. A shiver ran through my soul. The people there, they didn't seem to realize what they were doing. It was natural for them. Something common, an inevitable evolution. Don't they know? I asked. Mistake doesn't happen all at once. He comes like a serpent, stealthily, presenting himself as a benefit. The vision has changed. Now, I saw a hospital. A medical team surrounded a newborn baby, and a smiling doctor spoke to the parents. This small device will be implanted in your child. It will monitor your health and ensure you never get lost. It's just a security protocol, nothing more. The parents agreed without hesitation. Jesus made me look into the doctor's eyes. At first, he seemed sincere, but when I looked deeper, I saw something that froze my being. There was emptiness inside him. Something made him believe he was helping, but he didn't see the truth. The technology, it wasn't bad in itself, but it was being used for something bigger and more dangerous. Jesus turned to me. They are being prepared. My hands were shaking. The scene changed again. Now I saw churches. Pastors and religious leaders were in pulpits, preaching about acceptance and progress. I saw believers implanting devices, trusting that there was nothing wrong with that. Will even the church be deceived? I asked, horrified. Jesus nodded slowly. Many will not question it. Others will be silenced. But those who hear my voice will know how to discern. I felt crushing pressure in my chest. What I was seeing was real. The world was slowly being shaped, driven for a trap disguised as innovation. And most, I had no idea what was happening. The city around me began to transform. The present crumbled like broken glass, revealing an even more disturbing future. I saw homes, schools, hospitals, corporations, all interconnected by one invisible system, a digital flow that expanded like a web. Every person was part of it. A mechanical voice echoed through the air, informing of a new revolutionary breakthrough. Welcome to the new era. With new updates, you can live better, work stress-free, avoid illness, and be part of the global community. Everything at your fingertips. Security, health, connectivity, a world without worries. I looked at Jesus, feeling a lump in my throat. Don't they realize what they are accepting? He replied with sadness in his voice. The world has always chosen convenience over truth. Deception always presents itself as a blessing. My gaze returned to the sight before me. Saw children receiving brain implants. A smiling doctor explained to a nervous mother. These devices will help your child develop their cognitive skills better. He will be able to learn in seconds, effortlessly. Who would refuse something so wonderful? The woman hesitated, but around him, everyone had already accepted. She smiled awkwardly and consented. If everyone is doing it, it must be safe, right? The scene changed. Now I saw a World Congress. Leaders discussed the imminent economic collapse and how the only solution would be to implement a unified financial system, controlled by digital identification. A man in a dark suit, an influential CEO, spoke with authority. Physical money is outdated. Cards and passwords are flawed. But with neural authentication, you can pay and access your work and home without needing anything. Your body is your key. The audience applauded. But Jesus showed me something that no one there saw. As people accepted the new technology, something inside them began to change. Emotions seemed erased. Thoughts became programmed. Your eyes, once vibrant, they were opaque, empty. What's happening to them? I asked, anguished. They don't realize that they are giving away the most sacred thing, their free will. I looked into Jesus' eyes and, for the first time, I felt a real fear. The world was accepting a prison disguised as freedom, and no one questioned. The view changed again. The city in front of me looked the same, but something was wrong, different. There was an artificial silence. No R. People walked the streets as always, but their steps were calculated, meticulously rhythmic. No spontaneous laughter, no distracted glances, just a continuous flow, as if they were all parts within an invisible gear. I saw a family having dinner at a fancy restaurant. Father, mother, and 2 children. They didn't talk to each other. They were motionless, staring into space, with serene and cold expressions. There was no emotion in his eyes. They ate slowly, in perfect synchronization. Every gesture was calculated, mechanical. The mother put a piece of food in her mouth, paused for a second, and blinked strangely. A notification appeared in his eyes. She tilted her head slightly and murmured, "Update completed. Mood adjustment applied." My blood ran cold. They were being modified. I looked at Jesus in shock. Don't they realize they are being controlled? What seems like a benefit at first soon becomes a prison. I observed the youngest child, a boy of about 8 years old. He held a spoon, but did not bring the food to his mouth. His eyes trembled slightly, as if something inside him was struggling to emerge. Then, the mother gently touched her wrist. "Sync, baby. You are behind in your neural pattern." The boy blinked several times and, in a matter of seconds, his gaze it was empty, just like the parents. My body, or soul, or whatever I was at that moment, trembled with horror. They are losing their humanity. Jesus remained silent, just letting me absorb the reality before me. The system I didn't need to force them. The people voluntarily surrendered, and those who resisted, the scene changed again. I saw a man on the street, desperate, trying to buy food. He rang a panel to pay, but a red light flashed. Access denied. He tried again, his voice breaking. "Please, my daughter is hungry. I just want some food." The salesman looked at him indifferently. "If you are not synchronized, you cannot participate in the system. The rules are for your safety." The man fell to his knees, his eyes filled with terror. He had no longer existed for society. I felt my heart break. Jesus spoke again, his voice thick with grief. "Few will realize what is happening, but for most, it will be too late." Tears were streaming down my face. The world was not just losing freedom. I was losing my soul. The world before me broke apart. The peaceful scenery of the streets dissolved like ash blown by the wind, and in its place arose absolute chaos. Empty shelves in supermarkets, angry crowds trying to buy food, parents holding hungry children with desperate eyes. The news was broadcast on holographic screens spread across cities. World economic collapse. Banks in bankruptcy. Supply systems interrupted. Order needs to be re-established. Global crisis. Emergency technological solution can save humanity. Hunger, fear, disorder took over people. They were desperate. And then, the solution emerged. The same CEO I had seen before appeared on every screen. His face calm, his voice calm. Jared Sterling. We have reached a critical moment in human history, but don't be afraid. Progress has an answer. The crowd watched, holding their breath. Our economic system has been compromised. The money, the banks, everything failed, but we can rebuild. With the advancement of technology, we have created a secure and foolproof system, a new method of integrated digital identity. The audience murmured anxiously. The update will be simple. A subcutaneous implant, nothing invasive. It will guarantee access to basic resources, work, transportation, and security. Everything will be more efficient, fairer. The people, they looked at each other. Then, a woman in the crowd raised her hand. And those who don't want to, Jared smiled patiently. No one will be forced. But, naturally, the system will only work for those who are synchronized. The meaning, it was clear as day. Accept the mark or stay out. People didn't take long to give in, for fear of hunger, for fear of not being able to work. We update posts being set up in the streets. Huge queues formed. One by one, people accepted the implementation. The process was quick. A small device was pressed against the skin, gave off a faint blue glow, and that was it. And then, they changed. The first thing I noticed was the look. There was an artificial glow, an emptiness. And when I saw a man try to pray, that's when I understood what Jesus was trying to show me. The prayers were no longer strong. They were empty, as if they were being spoken into the wind. Jesus whispered beside me. They no longer belonged to themselves. My chest burned with the horror of the revelation. Humanity had sold your soul for a plate of food. And those who resisted, I saw one hunt begins. I saw families being uprooted from their homes. I saw children crying, women begging. I saw people hiding like criminals, just because they refused to accept the update. The world that I knew it no longer existed. Jesus looked at me sadly. What you see now is just the beginning, but there are those who resist, and they will shine like light in the darkness. The view changed again, and before me, I saw those who refused to bow down. The sight before me changed again. The chaos of the cities disappeared, and I found myself in a remote place, far from large metropolises. Mist-covered mountains surrounded small makeshift settlements. The houses were simple, some made of wood, others of reused metal. There were vegetable gardens spread across the fertile soil, bonfires lit in the cold, and groups of people gathered in prayer. They were those who resisted. They had refused the technological update and, as a result, had been expelled from the system. They couldn't buy food, they couldn't work, they didn't have a digital identity, but still, they glowed, literally. While synchronized humanity seemed charged with an artificial glow, these men and women, they had their own light, something that did not come from outside, but from within. I saw children holding their parents' hands. I saw elderly people telling stories under the starlight. And then I saw something that made me hold my breath. Angels. They were there, tall, imposing, surrounding the settlements. Its eyes glowed like living flames, and its wings were translucent, pulsing with a golden glow. They protected those people. My heart accelerated. They were not abandoned, I whispered. Jesus nodded. Those who trust me are never alone. The resistors faced extreme difficulties. The cold, the hunger, the persecution of the system. But I saw something that no longer existed in the other world. Hope. Miracles happened among them. I saw a woman with a baby in her arms. Desperate because her milk had dried up, she prayed, crying. And before my eyes, one of the angels stretched out his hand over her, and the milk flowed again. I saw a group of men going out to get food, their expressions filled with uncertainty. They bowed their knees and prayed, asking for provision. The next day, they found a wheat field sprouting where there had previously been only dry land. They were supported by the supernatural, but they knew they were at war. The hunt had begun. I saw armed groups patrolling the forests and deserts, drones flying over the mountains, tracking those who had not been updated. A young man was captured. They dragged him to a conversion center and tried to force him to accept the implant. If you refuse, your life will end here. He looked at the ground, with tears in his eyes. Then he lifted his face, and I saw the flame of faith burning within him. My life is not in your hands. And when they executed him, a heavenly glow enveloped his body. He didn't feel pain. He was received by the angels before his body even fell to the ground. I cried in front of the scene. The battle was not just physical, it was spiritual. The resistant would pay a high price, but God would support them. And Jesus looked at me, his voice echoing inside my soul. The time is coming. Tell them to get ready. The vision of resistant communities began to fade, and I found myself once again faced with Jesus. But now, his gaze was intense. It was no longer the serene expression that greeted me at the beginning. There was urgency. I was still processing everything I had seen. Cities being deceived, people becoming prisoners within themselves, the brutal persecution against those who resisted. Everything seemed inevitable. And it was then that he spoke, and his voice made my entire being vibrate. Listen carefully to what I'm going to say, Sable. People can still choose, but they need to be prepared. I tried to hold back the tears. How can they resist something so big? He looked at me firmly. I will tell you the 4 pillars of preparation. Without this, no one will remain standing. I felt a chill run through my soul. His every word was like thunder inside me. The mistake will be great. Many will be seduced without realizing it. The only way to escape will be to know my voice. I saw images of people trying to pray, but no connection at all. It was too late for them. Tell them to meet me now, to learn to listen to me before the world deafens them. My mind was flooded with a certainty. People needed a real relationship with God, not just empty religion. Jesus raised his hand and Bible appeared before me. But it wasn't just a book. It glowed as if it were made of living light. The truth has already been given, but it will be distorted. Those who do not know it will be deceived. We pastors and leaders preaching a distorted gospel. I saw churches accepting technology without question. The Bible will be considered outdated, but Jesus looked into my eyes. Those who know my word will see beyond the deception. Jesus showed me images of isolated Christians being persecuted and broken. But then I saw communities where faith was strongest. They helped each other, supported each other. Spiritual warfare cannot be won alone. They will need each other. I saw Christians creating secret support networks, sharing food, praying together. Those who were alone, they succumbed. This was the revelation that impacted me the most. Jesus showed children growing up within the system, already programmed to accept it. They didn't know what God was because no one taught them. I saw parents crying because their children could not feel the presence of God. If they don't teach their children now, when the time comes, it will be too late. I saw children being taught to depend on God above all, namely discern the truth amidst the lies. These children would be like end-time warriors. I was shaking. The message was clear. The battle, it wouldn't start with persecution. It would start with deception. And those who, if they were not prepared, they would fall without realizing it. Jesus looked at me one last time. You need to tell the world this. My soul burned. I knew my life would never be the same again. The weight of the mission that Jesus had entrusted to me was overwhelming. Every word he spoke was engraved inside me, as if it were part of my very being. But there was something I couldn't accept. I don't want to go back. The confession escaped my mouth like a whisper. My spiritual body trembled. I looked at him, hoping he would let me stay. How could I go back after see all this? After feel this peace, this absolute love? Jesus remained silent for a moment, and then his eyes softened. I know it's hard, Sable, but your mission is not over yet. I shook my head. They won't believe me. He moved a little closer. His presence was light, heat and truth at the same time. I have always used the humble to spread the truth. Fear not. You just have to talk. Whoever has ears to hear will hear. The pain tightened inside me. My heart was divided. But before I could say anything, I felt something pulling me back. An invisible force began to pull me away from that reality. Panic took over me. No, please, I'm not ready. Jesus stepped forward, and his voice resounded like thunder and a whisper at the same time. What you saw is enough. Now go. And then, the world fell apart. Suddenly I was falling. The light dissolved around me, and I was thrown into a dark void, an endless tunnel. My senses were collapsing. Everything was spinning. And then, pain, seam, shouting. My lungs filled with air violently, and my entire body exploded in pain. I heard alarms going off, voices screaming. My chest was burning, my limbs were heavy, my heart was racing. "She's back," someone shouted. My eyes opened and saw blinding surgical lights. The air entered my lungs like fire. My vision was a blur. I could barely move. Hands touched my face. Someone checked my vitals. My God. We lost her for more than 7 minutes. This is impossible. I heard a familiar voice. "She saw something. I know you saw it." My head was spinning. My mind was still caught between two worlds. But there was something I knew with absolute certainty. I had to tell the world. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.